Here's my preview of the Baylor versus Oklahoma State football game on Saturday. And keep in mind, Oklahoma State is number 9 in the country, while Baylor is number 16 in the country. And Oklahoma State has not faced a real opponent, so to speak. But offensively, they average 51.7 points per game. They have 84 first downs so far this year, 163.3 rushing yards per game, 348 passing yards per game. They have allowed 3 sacks and 11 tackles for loss. They only have 1 turnover, which is an interception this year. They allowed a block kick, 15 for 38 on 3rd down, 0 for 1 on 4th down, 25 minutes and 14 seconds of possession on offense per game. And they run a spread offense, and they're up tempo back to that compared to that to last year. They have allowed 15 pass breakups and 8 quarterback hurries. They're too deep on the offensive line. Average weight is 296 pounds. So, now some players to keep an eye on. Obviously, Spencer Sanders, their quarterback, number 3, 6'1", 210-pound quarterback. That's a senior. 62 completions out of 95 attempts for 916 yards with 10 touchdowns and 1 interception, and 27 rushing attempts for 110 yards with 3 touchdowns. Dominique Richardson is the only guy above 200 yards rushing on the team, by the way. He's number 20, 6 foot, 210-pound running back. That's a junior, 43 rushing attempts for 215 yards with 2 touchdowns. And he also has 8 receptions for 91 yards. So, some wide receivers are like Braden Johnson, number 8, 6 foot, 205-pound wide receiver. That's a senior. 14 receptions for 300 yards with 3 touchdowns. By the way, the other 2 running backs, Al Gordon, number 0, 6 foot 1 inch, 211-pound running back. That's a freshman. 8 rushing attempts for 73 yards with 1 touchdown, and 4 receptions for 43 yards with 1 touchdown. While Jaden Nixon, number 23, 5 foot 10 inch, 185-pound running back. That's a freshman. 9 rushing attempts for 26 yards, and 3 receptions for 33 yards with 1 touchdown. Brandon Presley is another guy to keep an eye on. He's number 80, 5 foot 8 inch, 175-pound wide receiver. That's a junior. 12 receptions for 166 yards with 1 touchdown. One rushing attempt for 3 yards. John Paul Richardson is another guy, number 17, 6 foot, 108-pound wide receiver. That's a sophomore. 9 receptions for 141 yards with 2 touchdowns. Bryson Green, number 19, 6 foot 1 inch, 205-pound wide receiver. That's a sophomore. 9 rushing attempts for 129 yards with 2 touchdowns. That's a lot more guys above 100 yards receiving, or more depth in terms of options for them this year. Though Steven Johnson Jr., number 6, 6 foot 2 inch, 182-pound wide receiver. That's a freshman. 4 receptions for 55 yards and 1 rushing attempt for 11 yards. Granted, I do know either like Blaine Green, number 28, 6 foot 1 inch, 220-pound fullback slash wide receiver slash tight end, is a sophomore. He's questionable with a wrist injury, and he might play. It's either him or Jaden Bray, who is questionable with an arm injury. Number 85, 6 foot 2 inch, 200-pound wide receiver. But and they do use a fullback in Braden Cassidy, number 90. 6 foot 2 inch, 240-pound fullback. That's a senior. 1 reception for -5 yards. So, but Cale Cabanis, number 83, 6 foot 2 inch, 200-pound wide receiver. That's a sophomore. 2 receptions for 37 yards with 1 touchdown. So, I'm going to go over some stats from last year on those specific guys, and Jaden Bray and Blaine Green. In terms of last year, which I did not put down for this year because they have nothing. But for so far, 21, Blaine Green, 21 receptions last year, 314 yards with 1 touchdown, along with 46 yards. Jaden Bray, he had 13 receptions last year for 250 yards with 2 touchdowns. So, and I'm pretty sure, I'm positive that one of those guys had five receptions for 50 yards or something like that. in the Big 12 championship game. So I'm going to double check on that. Okay, now I got the game stats that was pulled up from last year, which I know you got to take last year's game, 2 games with little to nothing. Yeah, Jaden Bray had 3 receptions for 52 yards in that game last year. So, yeah, that's kind of what I thought. Now, defensively, they have allowed 22.7 points per game. They have 30 tackles for loss and 9 sacks. They have a good pass rush returning from last year. They forced 2 turnovers, 1 interception, and 1 fumble. 34 minutes, 46 seconds allowed on time possession so far this year on average in their 3 games. 11 for 37 on third down, 2 for 5 on fourth down. They allow 111.3 rushing yards per game, while they allow 265.3 passing yards per game. That's a lot in 3 games. 58 first downs, and they run like a 4-2-5. They have blocked 2 kicks this year, and they got a safety. 26 quarterback hurries and 14 pass breakups overall. The average weight for the 3 deep at defensive tackle / defensive end, which combine both, 279.5 pounds. Defensive tackle is just 302 pounds for both defensive tackle spots, 2 deep or 3 deep. Now, defensive end at 3 deep is 258.3 and a third pounds. Some guys to keep an eye on, like Mason Cobb, number 06 for 230-pound linebacker. That's a junior. 24 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 5 quarterback hurries. Jason Taylor II, number 25, 6 foot, 215-pound safety. That's a senior. 18 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, and 3 pass breakups. Sorry. Xavier Benson, number 1, 6 foot 2 inch, 224-pound linebacker. That's a junior. 16 tackles, 0.5 tackles for loss, 1 pass breakup, and 3 quarterback hurries. Kendall Daniels, number 5, 6 foot 4 inch, 205-pound safety. That's a freshman. 16 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, and 1 interception. Tyler Lacey, number 89, 6 foot 4 inch, 285-pound defensive end. That's a senior. 11 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 2 quarterback hurries, and 1 fumble recovery. Lamont Bishop, number 11, 6 foot 2 inch, 235-pound linebacker, senior. 10 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, and 1 safety. Thomas Harper, number 13, 5 foot 11 inch, 180-pound safety. That's a senior. 10 tackles, 2 pass breakups. Sean Flanagan, Michael Flanagan, number 18, 6 foot 1 inch, 210-pound safety. That's a senior. 8 tackles and 1 pass breakup. Brock Martin, number 9, 6 foot 3 inch, 245-pound defensive end. That's a senior. 8 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 4 quarterback hurries, and 1 forced fumble. Jamar Muhammad, number 7, 5 foot 10 inch, 180-pound cornerback. That's a sophomore. 7 tackles for loss and 1 pass breakup. Now, Samuela Tuahalamanka, number 35, 6 foot 1 inch, 304-pound defensive tackle. That's a senior. 7 tackles, with 1.5 tackles for loss. Sion Asi, number 99, 6 foot 1 inch, 310 defensive tackles, senior. 6 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 quarterback hurry, and blocked 1 kick. Colin Oliver, number 30, 6'2", 235-pound defensive end, sophomore, 6 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and 2 quarterback hurries. Granted, I know there's Nathan Latu, number 92, 6'4", 265-pound defensive end, junior, 5 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, and 1 quarterback hurry. Corey Black, number 2, 6'8", 185-pound cornerback, 4 tackles and 1 pass breakup. Colin Clay, number 93, 6'3", 310-pound defensive tackle, 4 tackles, 1 solo, 0.5 tackles for loss, and 2 quarterback hurries. Brendan Evers, number 98, 6'2", 295-pound defensive tackle, 2 tackles, 0.5 tackles for loss, and 2 quarterback hurries. Trace Ford, number 94, 6'3", 240-pound defensive end. That's a junior, 2 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 3 pass breakups, 1. I don't know. I mean, he's had some quarterback and blocked 1 kick. But I'm going to double check on Trace Ford. But I tell you what, that defense has not faced any type of quality offense so far this year. No offense, it's the truth, because you got to keep in mind those first 3 games, especially the last game was a throwaway game. Arizona State's a dumpster fire right now. And Central Michigan, they were down 51-15, but they allowed them to come back. I'll put the stat stuff in the description below. Of course, to Jaden Bray and Blaine Green, I'm going to just leave that off because they have nothing so far this year. But I did include them as questionable. Trace Ford does have 3 pass breakups and 2 quarterback hurries this year. Yeah. Now, special teams wise, they have the same punters last year. Number 29, Tom Hunnan, 6'3", 201-pound punter. That's a senior. 15 punts for 644 yards. The average is like 42.9 yards, and the long is 52 yards. 2 punts went further than 50 yards, and 7 have landed inside the 20-yard line. Now, their starting kicker for this year is Tanner Brown, not Alex Hale. Number 49, 6', 180-pound kicker. That's a senior. 2 for 2 on field goals. 1 for 1 on 20 to 29 yards. 1 for 1 on 40 to 49 yards. And the longest 43 yards, and made all 19 extra points this year. On both sides of the ball, you got to limit the penalties as much as you can. Now, I'm going to start defensively. It's going to be, you've been able to stop the run all year long against all the opponents, regardless. I mean, on average, Baylor has only given up 79.5 rushing yards per game. That, to me, is not the issue in this game, in terms of like stopping the run against their running backs. Now, the pass defense is going to be a little bit of a challenge, because Spencer Sanders can scramble. You got to keep him in the pocket. Try to do that with 4 guys, and you don't really want to use a quarterback spy on him necessarily, but you might have to, but I would hate to. You got to get enough pressure on him and make him feel uncomfortable. Make him chunk the ball off his back foot. And keep in mind, he's thrown 10 career interceptions against Baylor in 4 meetings. 10. And 32 overall in his career. So I know he might be different this year so far, but he has not faced a good defense, let alone a top 70 defense in the country so far this season, nor Oklahoma State has. So you got to keep those stats in mind. That's really, really skewed on the offensive stats. So, I know Baylor's given up 225.8 passing yards, 225.8 passing yards per game. So far. I would dare to say you got to prevent the deep plays as much as you can. And if Spencer Sanders gets to scramble, only allow 5 yards or less. You don't want him to go off big time. I mean, that's the truth. I would also say you got to tackle in space really good in this game. That's important. Because the last thing you need to do is give yards after contact, especially yards after the catch. Of course, like I said, penalties. You got to not have those as much as you can. Especially like on a third down or a fourth down. So, of course, special teams wise, you got to make every extra point. Don't commit penalties, like I said already. I mean, and you got to make your field goals if you're going to take some. You got to make them. So, now, offensively, just take care. Of course, I forgot one thing defensively. Force turnovers. That's another thing to do in this game. Now, offensively, you got to take care of the ball. Don't commit penalties, like I already said, or as many as few as possible. In addition, you should be able to establish a running game and win the time of possession. Because, honestly, you should be able to run on them. They give up 111.3 rushing yards per game. Yes, that's a good number so far this year, but you got to keep in mind the 3 opponents they have played against. Central Michigan, they're 1-3. They may have improved a little bit, but they're not. They let them do a lot of damage. Second of all, Arizona State has fired a head coach, Herm Edwards, and they allowed them to run on them. I mean, they allowed it. And Arkansas Pine Bluff, that's no competition. That's a throwaway game right there. I'm sorry. They have a young. They can be exposed on run defense at times. Because in instances against Arizona State and Central Michigan, like I said, they have been exposed both in the run defense and the pass defense. Especially, and all you have to do is protect the court. You got to protect Blake Shapen good enough in passing situations, because you should be able to take advantage of this defense from linebacker and cornerback / safeties. You should. You got to execute your blocking on the run offense. So both wide receivers, tight ends, offensive line, and fullbacks even at times. So that's pretty good to know. Arizona State had 131 rushing yards on Oklahoma State, and Baylor's offensive line is better than Arizona State, and the run game is better than Arizona State. I'm just being brutally honest. So you should be able to run the ball on them. So, and I do know this, on the offensive line, Grant Miller is probable to come back this week. He did not play last game against against Iowa State on the road. Still no Tate McWilliams offensively with a head injury. Hopefully he comes back after the bye week, because after this game is a bye week. No Khalil Keith, who was a projected starter at right tackle this year prior to this season. He's still out for the game with an injury, undisclosed. But hopefully he'll be back after the bye week. Still no Cole Maxwell with a leg injury that he had against BYU. Hopefully he's going to be back for the bye week. So this is going to be you got to throw away the history in past meetings here, because especially, they're both different teams, and the last time Oklahoma State played Baylor in McLean Stadium, it was a beatdown. But the thing is, the game should not have been played. They were down players and they had injuries due to COVID, and even the coaching staff. Juice Johnson was the offensive coordinator for that game. They just didn't have enough able body, and not a lot of able bodies, so they got beat 42-3. And I'm not going to take it away for Oklahoma State on that game in 2020, because they were clearly the better team that day. But we're a different team now, especially with the better offense and a better defense, and there's no COVID issues within the program as we speak right now. So, like I said, Oklahoma State has not faced a real opponent. I'm sorry. All three of those teams, losing records. Baylor's been tested. I mean, Iowa State last week and at BYU in week 2. And Monterey Baldwin, I know he's back, but he's still not exactly back to his normal self prior to injury, but at least he's back. But thank goodness we have other guys stepping up. I mean, and Ben Sims came back last week, which is huge. And hopefully he stays healthy. So, and please don't commit personal foul targeting, especially that penalty, because it can affect it in his game here. So, I just want to go over all the stats on Oklahoma State, and including last year's stats on those two players, as well as what Baylor needs to do to win this game at home. As long as they take care of the ball, they should be able to score points. That's simple. I mean, yes, they allow 22.7 points per game, but they're not going to allow just that. I think it's going to be higher than that, like near 30s. And Baylor should be able to run between 150 yards to 200 yards. Maybe even more than 200. In passing, maybe like 200 yards, 200 or 300 yards. So they should be able to do some damage. As long as you get good at blocking, you should get past that defensive line, you should exploit them. Especially pass defense and run defense, because I know they have missed, if they miss like an area on the run, and I know they might be going up for this game as Oklahoma State is trying to get themselves pumped up for this game. You just got to match their level, and I would also say you got to finish first half better too, because in the BYU game you let them score too quick. Iowa State game, you let them score when you got too comfortable. When you were up 17-7, you need to finish the first half better, and same goes for the Texas State game. And don't turn the ball over. Like I said. Anyways, if you like this content, hit the like and subscribe button. And see you guys later. It's going to be the 400 subscribers and more by the end of this year.